Hi, I'm Ailia Zehra. Welcome to Dissent today. In this segment, we'll do a quick review of the human rights situation of Pakistan in the year 2025. So much has happened. A lot of human rights concerns were raised, and several people who were working for human rights were victimized, and there were cases registered against them. So, joining me today is Imaan Mazari, who is a human rights activist and lawyer based in Islamabad, and we talked to her about her own work defending human rights in Pakistan and also some cases that were registered against her recently. Iman, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So I know that you are dealing with some issues of your own. There's a case against you and your husband. So we talk about that. But before we talk about your own cases, let's just do a quick review of the other cases that you dealt with in 2025. I know you were involved with a criminal group that exploits people in the name of blasphemy that has entrapped several young people from across Pakistan in blasphemy cases using the blasphemy law. It's called the Blasphemy Business Group. And so, do you want to talk about your involvement with the case, how you represented the victims of this case, and what's the latest situation now?
So, the Blasphemy Business Group case is probably one of the most high profile cases to come out of the Islamabad High Court from 2024 till now. And high profile, I mean, because usually blasphemy cases are not live streamed in Pakistan. So, it was quite landmark in that sense. The brief background is that there's around 450 children. Young people who have been honey trapped into this blasphemy business racket, had fake cases registered against them by a group that comprises of lawyers, of various people, including some very influential religious leaders. And basically, what happened was that a writ petition was filed in the Islamabad High Court, where the families, around 101 petitioners, had sought the constitution of an inquiry committee to inquire into these allegations of honey trapping, of extortion by this blasphemy business gang. So that case proceeded live in the Islamabad High Court, and many disturbing facts were unearthed during those proceedings, including the glaring involvement of a lawyer, Rao Abdur Rahim, who just recently contested the bar council elections as well. And those cases, basically, there was a landmark order in that Justice Sardar Ijaz of the Islamabad High Court had directed the federal government in I think it was early 2025. He directed the federal government to form an inquiry commission. And then obviously that inquiry commission was to submit its report to the federal government, and eventually that report would have been made public. But what ended up happening was that the Blasphemy Business Group and the government itself challenged that order before the divisional bench of the Islamabad High Court, where two of the new judges post the 26th and 27th constitutional amendment. They heard the case, and in interim relief, they suspended the order. So today, there is no commission of inquiry to inquire into those allegations. But the positive news is that as a result of those proceedings and the facts that they unearthed, the Supreme Court and various high courts have been granting bails to many victims. I think it's now over 45 victims who have been released on bail. So there are some positive developments, of course, but I think overall, in terms of impact, the only thing that really would have had that impact for 450 people, and in terms of dealing with this broader issue of misuse of the blasphemy law, that still remains an unfulfilled task. I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Yeah, sorry. Just to understand the extent of their reach and the way they were able to misuse power, can you share something about the victims? I think that a man also passed away in custody, right? So could you share those details?
Yeah, so basically, there's been around five deaths in custody. There's been one young woman as well who was also killed. I don't want to mention the jail because I can't recall correctly which one it was. But what's happened is there was one young boy, and that case was what was unearthed during the Islamabad High Court proceedings. Abdullah Shah, he had left his home and told his parents he'd be back. He never returned. He was taken from outside Maroof Hospital in Islamabad by this honey trapping girl who later came to be known as Komal Ismail, who had referred to herself as Iman and honey trapped like 400 kids. And so this child, this kid, he was taken in by this Komal Ismail, and later when his parents lodged a first information report of kidnapping because they had seen the CCTV footage outside Maroof Hospital where he had gotten into that car. Eventually, what happened was the police were investigating, and hats off to the investigating officer at the time to actually go and try to ascertain the facts. That what happened was that while the police was investigating, they realized that the number that had been in contact with Abdullah Shah, that's the same number that had been in contact with multiple other boys who had also been entrapped in these false blasphemy cases. And eventually, what happened was that a body was discovered in Islamabad. I believe it was near NIH. And that body's DNA was matched with Abdullah Shah's mother's DNA. And that's when they found out that Abdullah Shah had been killed. Rao Abdul Rahim, the lawyer, actually had that was his number from which these phone calls were made. He was confronted about this in the Islamabad High Court, and he couldn't offer an explanation. Despite the fact that the Islamabad High Court, in a separate order, had directed that this matter be inquired into, the federal government till date is sitting on it. There's been no inquiry, no investigation into what happened to that boy and holding the perpetrators, including Rao Abdul Rahim, responsible. So there's been multiple incidents like this. Of course, this is one which, because the investigation by the police was done thoroughly, the facts did come to the surface when the Islamabad High Court began hearing the case. But there are many other such cases where boys have been, entrapped by these girls who call them and tell them that they want to meet them. When they end up going to meet the girl, there's these 5 6 Malvis that show up, in these thugs who abduct them, keep them in torture cells for multiple days, and then extort confessions from them, plant devices, plant phones on them. So this practice has not actually been properly inquired into at any level because this inquiry commission has not yet been formed. And the degree of influence of this blasphemy business group is that they threaten and continue to threaten a sitting High Court judge, Justice Sardar Ijaz, who had live streamed these proceedings. And in fact, before the proceedings were being live streamed, they had created an environment in the court where they had accused falsely the judge of perpetuating blasphemy. And once the proceedings were live streamed, they continued this behavior. And you could see it in all the live stream proceedings, how they kept trying to make it about the blasphemy law, like there was an attack on the blasphemy law. And they've actually given fatwas from various masjids in Islamabad and otherwise against us, against other lawyers who were representing these families, against the judge who was involved in the case, against judges of the Supreme Court and of the high courts who have granted bail. So they're very influential, and it seems like no one is able to stop them despite so much evidence against them.
Yeah, I know you and your husband, who is your co-counsel in this case, were also threatened by supporters of this group or this group itself. Do you want to share details of those threats with us?
So obviously, apart from the death threats and apart from the fatwas that were given in the Friday sermons against us and the other lawyers and the judges, what happened to us during the proceedings, and I think this also shows the level of their influence, that we were standing in a high court arguing about collusion between the NCCIA and the blasphemy business gang, and we were roped into a false inquiry by the NCCIA Lahore, and we were receiving summons. And the plan was to bring us to Lahore to plant material on our phone and to build a fake blasphemy case against us. But luckily, when these facts came to the surface in Islamabad High Court, and the inquiry officer was asked questions about it, he was not able to answer. But just to give you an understanding of the influence, that Hassan Mavia, who was Tahir Ashrafi's brother, he was the complainant in this case. And that was the position that we were taking in court. And that's the degree of their power, that they can just use the NCCIA to lodge fake inquiries against anyone. And it's not just us. Today, they're doing this to any journalist that talks about the blasphemy business gang, including Nadir Baloch, Mujahid Saab. There are multiple journalists who have received notices from the NCCIA in Lahore because that is Hassan Mavia's stronghold. And today, what happened was, today is the 30th, and what happened was that the families of the blasphemy business group victims were going to have a press conference in the Lahore Press Club, which had been booked for weeks in advance. And today it was cancelled on the obviously influence and intimidation of Hassan Mavia and his group in Lahore. So they're still functioning with complete impunity, like the federal government is not taking this seriously at all.
Right. Hassan Mavia, as you said, is the brother of Tahir Ashrafi, who is an influential cleric, and he was also an advisor to the government in Imran Khan's time. We saw in recent weeks that the government celebrated Christmas, took ownership of Christmas celebrations, issued some strong messages against religious extremism. The TLP was also banned recently, and there's a crackdown on it. Its leadership is in prison. Has that impacted the way they're dealing with the blasphemy business group at all, or as you say, they are actually influential? So are they able to? Is it different when it comes to this blasphemy business group?
To be honest, I even think that these measures that they've taken are very surface level. There's no actual demonstration of intent by the federal or provincial governments to deal with the issue of religious extremism. Even if you look at the banning of TLP, they have not done it through the Election Commission of Pakistan. So, how serious they are in dealing with this threat that they themselves created, that remains to be seen. But I definitely do think that the Blasphemy Business Group, because of the links that they have in the bureaucracy, in the government, they do hold a certain power and level of impunity that perhaps other groups may not or may not no longer hold.
Right. So I know you were also involved with the Baloch protests that took place this year. Some months ago, we were trying to get some comments from you, and you were so busy with the Baloch camp that we were not able to reach you. So tell us about that. I know that Baloch protesters came to Islamabad, held a protest demonstration, but no one showed up, and then they had to leave without getting anything. And they had really hoped that this time the state will listen to their grievances and they will get at least some information about their missing relatives, their missing loved ones, but nothing happened, and no one really listened to them or even expressed solidarity with them at the camp. So tell us about that.
Ilya was really sad because I think that if you remember the 2023 Baloch Long March to Islamabad, there were hundreds of people that marched all the way to Islamabad with the hope that they would receive some information about their forcibly disappeared loved ones. And then this year, I think there were just a total of maybe 20 or 30 families that came from hundreds. So that already shows that there are so few people left in Balochistan who have any hope that anything good will come from the state of Pakistan in terms of answers, excuse me, in terms of truth and reconciliation. So when these families came to Islamabad, they tried to set up camp in front of the press club. And on the first day, it was pouring rain in Islamabad. They were not allowed to put up their tents. These old mothers and these young children were out in the rain, in the freezing cold, and they were just trying to set up their camp. They were peacefully protesting. They were unarmed, peaceful, protesters. And they had posters in their hand of their missing loved ones. And this continued for 2-3 days where they tried to set up the camp outside press club, and they were attacked by the police, intimidated, threatened. Where they were staying in the different accommodations, they were forcibly removed from there. They were agency personnel that went to those places to surveil them, to intimidate them. There's video evidence of this. And then eventually, what happened was that the Islamabad administration and the police closed the roads leading to the press club. So they were basically protesting on the road in F6 Islamabad opposite the PSO petrol pump for over 70 days. And whether it was extremely hot or extremely cold, they sat there from morning till late at night. Obviously, it was very heartening to see that various people in Islamabad Pindi, various people from the Pashtun Tahaffuz movement, from the Tehreek-e-Tahaffuz Pakistan, from various political parties, opposition political parties, all did come into the camp. And that's usually how it is, that opposition parties do come into the camp, but not a single representative. And this was what was just crazy, that not a single representative of the government even came to acknowledge what they were saying, let alone act on their demands or try to engage with them. This is the first government in which nobody has even gone to speak. So when they were leaving, I think it was on their 72nd or 73rd day when they went back. There were families there: Nadia Baloch, Dr. Marang Baloch's sister, Mazev Shafiq, niece. And it's very sad because when these people went back, recently Mazev Shafiq's father was forcibly disappeared as well, and recently he's been released after a few days in illegal custody. So the cycle is continuing in Balochistan, and the people who had come to engage with the state have left disappointed. So it's very confusing as to who the state wishes to engage with in Balochistan to redress the human rights grievances so as to ensure some degree of stability and also preserve your national integrity.
Right. Can you give us an update on the cases against Maharang Baloch? What exactly is the allegation? I know there was an incident that took place after which she was taken in custody, but has there been any progress on that front?
So basically, obviously, the fact that she was kept along with other BYC leaders in detention under the MPO for 3 months proves that there's no actual case against her. Otherwise, they would have arrested her in those cases and then began those trials. But what's happening is that when she and other BYC leaders get bail in one frivolous FIR, they're falsely roped into another terrorism FIR. She's recently been acquitted of a case where Jibran Nasser was representing her at Karachi ATC. And there again, the government has apparently announced its decision to challenge that. So the allegations on Dr. Marang Baloch and BYC leaders are the standard typical FIR in Pakistan, which says, for example, there was a protest and people began using sticks and people began throwing stones and chanting anti-state slogans, and then they tried to intimidate and overpower law enforcement agencies, and therefore they have committed acts of terrorism. And those are the standard FIRs against all of them. But till date, Dr. Marang Baloch and all the BYC leadership remains incarcerated. There's no real trial proceeding in their case. There's no actual charges against them. There's not even a degree of openness and transparency by allowing them to be tried in a public court. They're being tried in jail, in Huda jail in Quetta. So I think that shows that there's actually no case against them.
Yeah, and this is a pattern, right? Where you are acquitted in one case, and then there's another case registered against you. We've seen that in cases of, PTI leaders also, and Ali Wazir, the former parliamentarian, who is, I think, the last time I spoke with his lawyer, most of the cases have been dropped, but he's still in prison because there's another FIR that they're waiting on an update on. So this is really something that's happening for quite a while in Pakistan, and it seems like this is a pattern now. So one thing that I also want to address was the state of religious minorities in Pakistan. There was a report that came in September of this year about gave us a country update on Pakistan, according to which the state of Ahmadis in particular was very troubling, and there have been attacks on their worship places. So, as a human rights lawyer, I'm sure you've been privy to some of the cases, at some point. So, you want to comment on how, how there's an impunity around violence against the Ahmadi community, and how, state officials are not really concerned when it comes to these attacks.
I think that on this issue, there's no state functionary who has taken a position. At least, I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't recall that happening. And the reason being that, unfortunately, the dehumanization of Ahmadis is so pervasive in our society that nobody wants to touch that issue. And so, obviously, even on the state level, when you're dealing with false blasphemy cases or you're dealing with the protection of Ahmadi community, there is this apathy on the part of the government. Perhaps that stems from fear. Perhaps that also just stems from not wanting to upset their really religious, conservative, right wing voter bases. So I do think that's a problem across the board. I don't think there's any political party in Pakistan that has addressed this issue or even had the courage to speak on it.
Right. I think it also stems from the fact that the Constitution, the way it is worded, the Second Amendment kind of encourages violence and discrimination against the group, right? And no one tries to address the issue the way it is misused, that part of the Constitution. So finally, Iman, we're almost out of time. I would love to talk about your cases as well. And I'm really concerned about that also. What exactly is going on with you? It's hard to keep track because, there's so much that you do with the human rights situation in Pakistan, and you are often in trouble because of what you do. So tell us what's going on.
So I think, Ailia, you said it yourself that when you do all this work, there are consequences, right? So we are dealing with those consequences. And I'll still say that obviously we're still a lot better off than all these people that we've just spoken about, whether it's Ali Wazir or Marang Baloch, and the treatment that's been meted out to them because they're from the peripheries of Pakistan. But basically, my husband Hadi and I have been roped into this absurd case. It's a tweets case where basically the NCCIA has alleged that there are 7 tweets of mine that I've posted from 2021 to 2025, which have incited racial and ethnic hatred, portrayed the image that the armed forces of Pakistan are incapable of countering the threat of terrorism, that the armed forces of Pakistan are behind in force disappearances. And so basically, all the allegations that are a part of public discourse on mainstream TV, even today, and have been a part of Supreme Court judgments and High Court judgments. But if Hadi and I talk about them, then we're going to be tried and potentially convicted 7 to 14 years for it. So that is essentially the case against us. And right now, the stage is we would have actually gone to jail in like a couple of weeks ago. We were expecting our conviction and we had gone with our bags packed. I don't remember the exact date, but it was maybe like about four weeks ago or so. And that because we had filed a transfer application in the High Court and because our case was pending in the Supreme Court. So for that reason, the trial proceedings slowed down a bit. And then the Supreme Court had ordered that the trial be stayed till the Islamabad High Court decided on our criminal revision, in which basically we had challenged the recording of prosecution evidence in our absence. Because Section 353 of the Criminal Procedure Code says it mandates that the accused have to be present in court when evidence is being recorded. And that's obviously an Article 10A right of ours. And the Supreme Court ordered that. After that, the Islamabad High Court directed the trial court to re-record the evidence. So basically, the trial started afresh from the point of recording of evidence. Now, all 5 prosecution witnesses have recorded their evidence, and Hadi and I are conducting cross-examination on the witnesses. There's 2 witnesses that we've both completed. The third witness is now being cross-examined by Hadi, and I think this cross-examination will continue for a while, especially because the investigating officer and the complainant of the case remain to be cross-examined, and the next date of the trial is on the 5th of January.
So let me get this straight. All the evidence that they've presented so far is just based on, it's just your tweets from your,
Yeah, and it's really
that's
funny.
already public.
Yeah, but it's really funny because we confronted them. Hadi confronted them during cross-examination, like where, for example, I've tweeted that Dr. Marang Baloch remains incarcerated, and the state is giving a message to people that you're going to punish those who raise their voice instead of raising arms, which is obviously showing a preference for raising your voice instead of raising arms. So we've shown like multiple comments like that about enforced disappearances, about political prisoners, from different people. So some of the material that we confronted these witnesses with during cross-examination were books by the former ISI chief, by Pervez Musharraf. And we said, like, basically, our tweets are no different from the admissions that have been made in this book. So why is it that we are being tried and they have been published and their books are readily available in Pakistan? So it doesn't make sense. So I think that way the trial's been really interesting because whoever advised the state to launch these proceedings, it was very badly thought out, because if you bring into discussion and you're bringing into the court record the fact of enforced disappearances and our opinions on it, we can back our opinions up with court orders, with facts, with evidence, with testimony. How are you going to deny it then? So it becomes very difficult for them.
Yeah, no, it is clear that you're being targeted for your human rights work so that you could be stopped from pursuing that work. But why exactly is it happening? Which case do you think it is that's making
So
them upset?
I think anger has been building for quite some time, and it surfaces like every year with a new FIR or something. But this time they've made like a long-term plan, and the messaging that I got during the Baloch family's camp, and this was a message that was communicated to me. It was that you like Dr. Marang Baloch so much, so now we're going to treat you like Dr. Marang Baloch. Thankfully, that hasn't happened yet. But what I think
And who
that
said it?
so I can't convey who had said it, but basically it was
Someone who
someone
said, right?
who
Okay.
had been told to convey it to me.
Okay.
So I don't think that like I think that the plan, and at that point as well, this was like many months ago. Hadi and I had discussed it then as well, that the plan seemed like they want to put us in jail for for a significant amount of time so that we're not able to do this work.
Right. So, what exactly is your plan here? Are you? Do you think that you will be arrested, and if so, what? How are you going to pursue this case? Because the situation right now in Pakistan is, very troubling. People are scared to speak up, right? Even those you think would speak up, do not speak up, right? Because they fear having the same fate. So, are you concerned at all that you will not be able to pursue this work anymore?
Yeah, I think that's something that I do feel, guilty about, because when you feel like people rely on you and they expect you to, appear in court to be there, it's a huge guilt that you take with you. But I think that as far as the going to jail part is concerned, I'm not too bothered about that. I think it's something, I've done before. I'm happy to do it again. I don't think that going to jail is going to change my conviction or, move me away from this path that I've chosen. But I do think that it's going to be difficult to think of those victims and what they're going through in our absence. But we do have hope that there are many other lawyers who do this work, and we know that the that space does get filled, and we know that people will come up and will take these cases and will talk about it. That's the other thing, that when you try to threaten and intimidate people so much with jail and incarceration, the fear of that also disappears at a certain point. And I think that is what's happening in Pakistan, because half the country is in jail. Every second person is going to jail for a tweet, for something they say, for an interview they've given on the side of a road. So I think that fear will also go the more you fill up the jail.
Right. Before we end this, do you want to also comment on the I know you have a complicated relationship with the PTI, but how there are different views about how the leadership is dealing with this crackdown that's taking place against their workers. Do you think they're doing enough to the leadership to raise awareness on the plight of on how their workers are being the ones who don't really have a platform of their own to highlight what's going on?
So I think, Elia, there's been a big shift in the party messaging since Sohail Afridi has come, and I do
Chief
really
Minister of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa.
the Chief Minister of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. I do really like his style of mobilization. I like his, head-on attitude that he has on addressing issues. So I think that's a breath of fresh air, and I think that it's something that's a positive change from the PTI leadership before under Ali Amin Gandapur, where you saw that workers were being sent to get shot and the leadership was not even there. So I think there is that shift that's coming, and I hope for their sake and for the people who gave them the mandate on 8th February that they do stand with those people, and they do. And I do see that mobilization, because, for example, what I saw recently, albeit only on the media or like social media in Lahore, that was really refreshing, because you usually hear that in Punjab, it's status quo and people don't want to resist. But the fact that Sohail Afridi, despite all the hostility and the aggressive posturing by the provincial government under Maryam Nawaz, despite the fact that he was, all of that was happening, he was able to go and bring people on the streets there. So I want to have hope that under this young worker leadership, things will change. But I can't say, because there's a lot of people in the PTI leadership otherwise, who I wouldn't feel that way about.
It's going to be a real challenge for him if he actually wants to do that. Thank you, Iman,